Okay, so, higher education, it's always changing, right? But something's been kind of bugging me lately. I've been reading a lot about it. And it seems like something big is going on with international students, like their whole relationship with study in America. Maybe the pull of U.S. universities isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something really important there. Like, if you're thinking about studying in the US, or even if you're just, interested in global education trends, what's happening right now is worth paying attention to. There's this sense that the policies, like the ones that have come into effect in the past few years, are making a lot of super talented students from all over the world like really stop and think, is the American dream of going to college here still the right move?
Totally. It's not just like, the usual visa stuff.
Yeah.
What's really striking me is this like deep anxiety that's coming through. Some are even scared of being deported just for saying what they think. And there's this whole uncertainty about even traveling home and being able to get back to their studies. And the thing that's really, really telling is this feeling of not being welcome. Like, it's a huge contrast to how America used to be seen, as this place that welcomed everyone.
And it's so important to remember the massive role these international students play. They're not just here to learn, they contribute in so many ways. Like economically, they bring billions of dollars into the US economy through tuition, through just living here, spending money in local communities. And culturally, right, they bring so much to our universities, to society as a whole, all these different perspectives and experiences.
The numbers are crazy. I mean, we're talking about an estimated $43.8 billion added to the U.S. economy, supporting something like 378,000 jobs. Just in the last year. That's huge. So here's the big question I keep coming back to. Is the American dream of studying here, is it fading for students worldwide? And if it is, what happens then? What does it mean for our universities, for America itself? So let's dive into this. And I guess the first thing that jumps out is this climate of fear.
Yeah, this is what really stood out to me too, going through all this research. Like, there's this example of a PhD student. She's from South Asia, studying at the University of Rochester. She's deep into her studies, but now she's like having to watch what she says, especially about things like LGBTQ plus rights. This isn't some academic debate for her. It's a real fear of the government watching her, judging her for her opinions.
It's hard to imagine, right? Being in this intense academic world, something you've worked towards for years, and having this constant worry about speaking your mind. And it's not just about what you say. It affects something as simple as travel, too. This student, she's even hesitant to visit family back home, during breaks. Because what if suddenly there's a travel ban? She could be stuck, unable to get back to the U.S., unable to continue her research.
Yeah, this fear about travel, about being able to come back, it's so disruptive. I mean, how can students focus on their studies when they're always looking over their shoulder, worried that something totally outside their control could just end their academic journey? And this student's story, it's not unique. It points to this bigger unease that's out there. It's like international students are being pushed to hold back, to not get involved on campus, to not be politically active, to even be careful what they post online, just to avoid any potential trouble.
Which is crazy, right? I mean, that's the opposite of what university is supposed to be about. It should be this place where you can question anything, debate, share ideas freely.
So let's move on to the economic side of this. You mentioned earlier how much international students contribute financially. So why is it such a big deal if fewer of them come to study in the US? Like, what does it mean for our universities?
So a lot of universities in the U.S., especially the private ones, they depend a lot on tuition money. And international students often pay full tuition, right? So they're really important, especially now when some areas are actually seeing fewer American students enrolling. If the number of international students drops sharply, these universities could end up with huge budget shortfalls, which means less money for everything, for hiring professors, for research, even for basic student resources, for everyone, not just international students. So it's like this ripple effect, right? It's not just about the tuition money they bring directly. It's also about all the economic activity they generate in the towns and cities where these universities are. Their rent, groceries, going out, all of it. That $43.8 billion figure, the 378,000 jobs, it shows how big their impact really is. They're a crucial part of the economy.
Exactly. And this is where how welcoming America seems, it becomes so important. There was this interesting point made by Clay Harmon. He's from the American International Recruitment Council. They focus on ethical international student recruitment. He said that even without specific policies saying no to international students, it's the whole vibe,
Yeah.
all these different things happening, plus the general tone from certain groups, it can make America seem like it doesn't want them here.
Yeah, it's like death by a thousand paper cuts, right?
Yeah.
Each thing on its own might not seem that big. But together, it creates this atmosphere that makes students think twice. And we're
Yes.
seeing this play out already, right? You mentioned something about recruiters in India noticing a change in where students want to go.
Oh, yeah. India is a major source of international students for the U.S., right? And recruiters there are saying that students who would have normally aimed for the top American universities, like the Ivy League schools, they're now looking at Europe, Canada, other countries. They see those places as more stable, more welcoming, less caught up in the political stuff and, the perceived hostility they associate with the U.S. now.
It's amazing how fast these ideas spread,
Yeah.
especially now with social media. It's not just like official statements from the government that are shaping these decisions.
Definitely not. Places like Reddit are actually playing a huge role. News about immigration policies, even if it's not totally accurate, spreads like wildfire among these students. They're sharing information, talking about their worries, comparing different countries. Students in China, India, Canada, they're all having these discussions online. And a lot of times they decide that the US, even with its great universities, it's just too risky, too stressful compared to places like the UK, Germany, Australia.
And it's not just talk, right? We're seeing students actually making the choice to go elsewhere.
Exactly. The fact that some students are deferring their offers for fall 2025, that's a big deal. These are students who got accepted into American universities, but they're choosing to wait or maybe even say no completely because things are so uncertain right now. It shows this real hesitation.
So while all this is going on, how are the universities reacting? I mean, they're kind of stuck in the middle of all this, aren't they?
Totally. On one hand, you've got schools like Northeastern University. They're really trying to reassure international students, saying they're committed to being this welcoming global community. They're putting out statements, creating web pages, trying to fight those negative perceptions. But then you see other things happening in the system that contradict that message. Like Bunker Hill Community College, also in Massachusetts, they actually canceled their short-term study abroad programs because they're worried about travel, about their students not being able to get back in. So even within the same state, you've got these very real anxieties.
It's a weird mix, right? One university trying to project this image of openness, and another one taking action based on real fear. And then there are even more serious examples of the risks involved.
Oh, yeah. Like the warnings from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism. They're telling their international students straight up, you could be arrested or deported. That's a pretty heavy thing to hear.
Right.
And then there's the case at Brown University, where a professor with a valid visa was deported to Lebanon. They accused him of supporting a certain political group. This sent shockwaves through the academic world. And Brown, they ended up advising their international faculty and students to not travel internationally. That shows how worried they are. It's not hypothetical anymore. These are real cases with real consequences.
That Brown University case, it's really unsettling.
Mhm.
A professor with the right paperwork deported over his supposed political views. It makes you wonder how secure anyone feels, especially if they're from another country. I can't imagine trying to do research or teach with that hanging over you.
Yeah, it raises questions about academic freedom. Can international scholars and students really engage with different ideas without being afraid? If universities themselves are telling people not to travel internationally because they're worried, it means something's wrong. Like that basic trust and stability that's so important for global academic exchange, it's breaking down.
So it seems like even though U.S. universities still have a great reputation academically, all this stress, all this uncertainty, it's making potential students think, is it really worth it?
That's the heart of it, I think. The U.S. has always attracted brilliant people from around the world, but if these policies, this feeling of not being welcome, if it keeps these students away, everyone loses out. The students themselves, obviously, but also the universities, the U.S. economy, the whole intellectual scene here.
So for those of you listening who tuned in to learn more about what's happening with international students in the U.S., I think we've shown just how complex and how quickly this is all changing. It's a mix of policy changes, what people are saying publicly, and how students around the world are reacting to it all.
And it leaves us with a big question. What happens next? If these talented students decide to go elsewhere, What does it mean for American universities, for America's place in the world? It's a question that's going to be with us for a while, I think.